My name is Sari van Poelje. I'm a business consultant and I specialize in helping businesses innovate as quickly as they innovate their products. That means basically I fly around the world helping people create new types of leadership, new types of cooperation, new types of mixing innovation and sales, and new types of grouping together for one purpose. I've been doing this for 33 years. I also have a school for coaches and consultants, and I occasionally coach team members in leadership teams and boards. I love my job. I've been doing it for a long time, and I love the way we are both healers and surgeons. So on the one hand, we help raise people's consciousness and awareness. And on the other hand, sometimes you have to cut and be incisive as a business consultant. And I want to tell you a story about incisiveness. I was called some time ago to coach a startup team. And it's a brilliant startup. It was started by three brothers. And the three brothers had a fantastic idea of a high-tech business that could conquer the world. One of them was operational, one of them was technical, and the other was a more general manager profile. They did really well. They tried out their first product, decided that hardware wasn't really where the margins were, jumped on the software wagon, and have now got a product which they launch in partnership with a Chinese hardware business. And they have launched in 22 countries and have gotten 10 million investment in from outside investors. At the same time as they're expanding their business, they're also expanding their own organization. And so they've started hiring people. First, like most startups do, they hire people they know who are generalists. And then gradually the business becomes too big and they actually start to recruit other leaders as well. Some leaders might come from other startups, but in this case, some leaders came from other multinationals. That's an aside really, but sometimes I wonder if startups are trying to emulate their investors' organizations and they suddenly start to call themselves CEOs and CFOs when there's only 20 people in the business. But I'll talk about that another time. This startup is doing exceedingly well, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of it. And I was called in to give management team coaching. The presenting problem, as we say, for the management team coaching was that they weren't able to take decisions together. By that time, there were 3 founders in that team and 3 external people. And the 3 founders had shares as well. The external people could get shares as the company grew, but didn't have shares yet. I told the CEO, let's call him, who commissioned me, can I sit in on one of your meetings? And so I sat in one of their meetings. It took ages. I was sitting there for 3 hours with 6 people who really did not take decisions. So they discussed a lot. They got distracted by details. They started to discuss the Christmas party last month. They involved other people, sat in with the team who were not management team members. A very interesting organic whole. And on the other hand, we ended the 3 hours without any decisions taken, but a lot of heartbeats going much faster because of the stress. I was thinking about this. What really happened here? What kind of distractions were there? A distraction in technical terms for me is when people start to talk about the process in the group much more than they talk about the work. So I can see when the dynamics in a group of pressure or agitation or intrigue get higher than the forces of cohesion, people actually turn inwards and start to talk about the mistakes the other person made, the process in the group, the lack of leadership, but then in general terms. So it's a really good indicator and a really good deal if you can get into a normal management team meeting as a coach. One of the things that struck me is that most of the dynamics were around the confusion between the shareholder and the management role. So the three founders were actually busy fighting with each other during management team meetings, while the others were bystanders and silenced in a way. I took the three founders separately and I said to them, look, there's a difference between being a shareholder and running the company strategically long term and being a manager where you make sure that these decisions are executed and you're focused on creating cohesion within the management team. My proposal was to coach both groups separately instead of together, to see if a differentiation in structure would help them to solve their problems. Now I manage them and coach them separately. And actually the management team has calmed down a lot. What has emerged in the shareholder team is very, very usual for startups. And that's really what I want to talk about as well. When you start a startup, you actually create a system where you say, we are interdependent. And therefore we will share the ownership of the company. In this case, there was someone who was really good at operations, someone who was really good technologically, and someone who was a really good sales and general manager. And they started off their journey together saying, hey, we're brothers in this field, and we actually depend on each other for the success of the whole. As time went on and they grew and they become more successful, the sales function and the general management function in relation to the investor became more important. The product was already there, it was selling well, the technology was gradually being improved, but didn't need any leaps and bounds. And so the person who was the CEO got to think, well, actually, I'm not so dependent on the other two to be successful. This happens in startups a lot, that you start on a basis of equality and interdependence. And as the success grows stronger, you start to think you can do it without the other two or three or whatever number you are. One of the really important things as a team coach is to teach people the notion of interdependence. I can only win if you win. If you lose, I lose. The difficulty with that is that we spend most of our lives avoiding interdependence. Especially in the West, we're taught to become independent. And as the pressure grows, that striving to be independent becomes bigger. What I would really propose is that team coaches start to take this view of interdependence and of teaching people that actually together we can win more.